committee meeting of Tuesday the 10th of February. Can I remind members that the meeting has been recorded and will subsequently be available for public consumption at a future date. Can I ask Claire if we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. Just one apology this morning from Councillor Collins. Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, do we have any declarations of interest? No. Okay, item number 3, the minutes of the meeting of the 13th of November 2014. Are members happy that it's a true record of the meeting? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item number 4 is a regular report that we receive updating members on the current position regarding the Scottish Welfare Fund. Can I ask Lorna if there's anything she wishes to add to the report?
Okay, thanks, Chair. Just one addition on paragraph 3.8, just to advise members that DWP have now confirmed the allocation for DHP for next year, and as early indications were correct, it is £44,000 less than we currently have, but we are still currently waiting on Scottish Government's allocation. We have been chasing them, but I've got no answer as of yet. But happy to take any further questions on the report.
Okay, can I open it up to members? Do I have any questions on the report? Jane?
Yes, if we wouldn't mind just discussing around this, please, Colin. I'm interested in knowing in 3.2. The biggest reason for applications is due to applicants having run out of money and having an emergency need. Is the crisis grant given because there is a sudden factor that is really needed? Because lots of people can run out of money, and I fully understand that. And people go into loans and all the rest of it. But I just wonder what sort of whether it has to be a particular need suddenly for a particular item, or something very specific like a reason for going to hospital, or just something, or is it much more to do with people not managing overall?
For crisis grants, it needs to be an emergency, an unforeseen emergency has arisen. So there may have been a reason why someone has run out of money, whether they've had something breaking down in their household or an unexpected bill. To qualify for the crisis grant, they also need to be in receipt of specific benefits as the normal qualifying criteria as well. So the underlying qualifying criteria is that it's an emergency, it's an unforeseen event that has arisen.
Could I just come back? So the next question then is that, yes, you have something unforeseen. What do we do with respect to referring people on a sort of pathway? If people are, they have a problem, if you just stick a sticking plaster over it, it's not forever. So can you possibly lead me through what actually happens?
Initially, with the crisis grants application, it was just dealing with the application, and that was the end of it. We didn't have the time or the resource to delve into it. With the welfare support officers now in post, that's some of the areas that we're beginning to look at, where someone, especially where they've had a multiple application into crisis grant, or where they say they haven't been able to cope, our welfare support officers will be contacting these applicants and looking at particular circumstances to see, is there other support we need to be putting in there, is there other avenues for these people to assist for the particular circumstances. So that's something we're now starting to have a look at, and I'm hoping in future reports we can have some sort of information back from our welfare support officers to give us a feel for what assistance is being provided, or if there's anything we have been able to do to assist people who are finding themselves in crisis situations.
Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. The first sentence of paragraph 3.5, volume of appeals for community care grants have significantly reduced during November and December, with only 6 received, Chair. Any explanation or reason for that?
For the reduced number of appeals, yeah, I think one of the, with the fulfilment of community care grants now being goods rather than money, we're much more probably on top of what the application, why it's arisen, and it seems to be that it's fulfilling the person's need, and we've got people on the ground who are actually out there seeing that person, and and fulfilling their needs. So I'm getting a feel for that's one of the reasons why. Obviously, the system has now been running for nearly 2 years now. You know, actual users and support services are much more aware of what the system can provide and what it can fulfil. So some of the applications where we had before, where it resulted in appeal because there was a misunderstanding about what we could actually cover within the scheme, that will have some bearing on the number of appeals and them being reduced as well. But I think the fulfilment, from what I understand, what I'm seeing so far, is having a big impact on that.
That's helpful, Chair. Without putting words in the Lorna's mouth, in other words, there would appear as a consequence to be a reduction in the number of speculative, if I can put it that way, applications. Thank you.
Just a very brief point. It says that 9% of applications are due to applicants having lost their money. Is that literally lost their money, can't find it, or had it taken away? 'Cause how do you prove that they've actually lost it and not spent it?
We have quite a number of people who have physically lost it, left it on the bus, dropped it in the street, or it's been stolen. We ask where it's been lost or stolen, we ask them for a crime report number to back up that, and we'll have a contact at the police station that we can verify, fast track to verification that it has actually been either a crime and it's been reported. It is checked, yes.
Thanks, Chairman. I think just see in regards to table 3.6, see if we get same allocation and funding and such like for this time next year, how if it rolls on, will that table look just the same? Will it be like for like, or can you see any changes, any trends that would look different in that table?
It's difficult to project in that we know that the money we're using to cover the shortfall in size criteria, that will continue. We don't see any reduction in that. But obviously, detailed in Appendix 3 for DHP, we're saying what other areas we're covering. So, you know, we've still got quite a significant amount is under the other category, which tends to be people are just in difficulty. They're, you know, the other welfare reform, things like non-dependent deductions, the restrictions, LHE is covered in another paragraph. These are continued pressures with, you know, fuel prices coming down, food bills coming down, but there may be less of a pressure, but it'll really just depend. I don't anticipate it changing greatly over the next year, but that's obviously, market fluctuations could change that.
With the fact that the fund is obviously very much being maximised, if there's any reduction in the Scottish Government grant towards the fund, then obviously it might be something we'll have to revisit in terms of the criteria if we don't have the funding in place. So we'll obviously have to look out for the notification from the Scottish Government as to how much funding we're going to get next year, but it does look quite clearly that the fund is very much being maximised. Ronnie?
It's regarding Appendix 2. Just explain to me number of applications taken, number processed, and the number of applications awarded. That's pretty straightforward. But it's the Nithsdale where you've got applications taken and processed is higher. Is there a reason for that?
It may just been a roll forward for the previous month, so you know we're doing it in month. We'll have numbers that we either catching up from previous month or rolled over from the previous year. So that's usually the explanation for it.
The number processed and the number awarded is, you know, it's like half mostly. Well, in Annandale, Nithsdale, and Nithsdale, but where does it fall down? Is it just what they're asking for doesn't qualify, or?
Yeah, we've tried to look at whether there's a trend in different areas about, you know, the number of awards that we give in areas and the values that we give, and there is no specific trends. It really just depends what people are asking for at a specific time as to the level of award and the number of awards. Most of the ones where we're saying no to applications is either they don't fall within the criteria or the scheme, or they're not at a sufficient. At the moment we're paying medium level claims, that they may fall below the level that we can award.
Okay, members, if there's no other questions, we'll turn to the recommendations. Are members happy to note 2.1 and 2.2? Okay, thanks very much. We turn to item number 5, which is a bid to the Welfare Reform Mitigation Fund. Can I ask John if there's anything he wishes to add to the report?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a correction, apologies to members, paragraph 3.4, 4 lines down, 5 lines down, where it refers to the average number of applications per month, that should read 350 and not 150. That was a typographical error, so apologies to members on that. Nothing further to add, but happy to take any questions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, can I open up to members' questions? Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. More an observation, sir, rather than a question. I mean, if I'm understanding it correctly, this application was put in on the 23rd of September, and it's now almost the middle of February, and it's an area of activity where we are under pressure. You can argue that we've not, festina lente might be the maximum, for dealing with this one. Was there any reason? First of all, is it accepted that it's been taking a length of time to get here? And secondly, if that is the case, Chair, why should that be so?
Thanks, Chair. I think the straightforward reason for it is that the application was put in September, but that didn't coincide with the committee schedule, and there was no other business for the committee to consider. So we rolled forward that application with 1 or 2 others for consideration today. In terms of the demand, obviously it's a trend that's been developed over the last few months, and it was considered by the officer subgroup that there was a need to intervene at this point, just to provide that additional resource to make sure that both the processing of DHPs, which is what this post will cover, but also pulling the other staff back to work on the core benefit assessment would tackle the lack of resources that we've got on both elements of the service. But I think in terms of the question, it was just the timing issue of the bid in relation to the preparation that was needed to bring it forward to committee.
Can I say, sir, that I'm totally supportive of the application. I have no problems with that, but I wonder perhaps in the future, notwithstanding John's explanation, if we should maybe make use of some form of expedited process whereby yourself as chair, as it were, has the authority to, in fact, there is an expedited process whereby we can get this type of decision taken and get on with it rather than sort of, hanging about, wait for a committee schedule. That would be my own personal view. Now, that's not meant as a criticism, Chair. My comments are meant to be helpful. Let me make that clear to you.
Thanks, Chair. We'll certainly take that on board and bear that in mind in future for any future applications. Thanks.
Ronnie and then
I think we're a bit doubtful about that.
Thanks, Chair. Equality. I'll go first then. Sorry, I lost my thought. It's 3.2. It mentions, the food banks and that. And the question I was going to ask, I really should have asked it the last time. I live right beside the Annan Can, and they have a food bank and referral, and people get bits of furniture and that. Is that a partner, or do we signpost people there, or is it done through a different vehicle? I just wondered if there was a link between, what we're doing here and what the cans are doing.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of the overall provision of those kind of services, we have gone through an exercise of mapping the availability of agencies like food banks and furniture projects and other support services, and that information has been posted on the Welfare Reform Knowledge Hub that we've established, so other practitioners can see what services are out there, make sure that they can make contact. In relation to the reference to 3.2, that didn't involve the CAM project. It was a joint project from Nitsdale and from Stranraer, but there was key information that was outstanding that we needed them to go back and clarify. So we're working with them to try and develop that bit up. But it was focused on Dumfries and Stranraer primarily, the reference to 3.2.
You want to come in, Jane?
Thank you. I think I'm sort of slightly digging in my toes about the notion of giving discretion. So I just put down a marker that I don't think that's a brilliant idea. I think we should all probably be able to see what's happening. So could I ask about the, there's a suggestion here that there's been a reduction in performance, and I think it stands at 1.3 days at the moment. And I wonder if you could explain to me what the reduction has been. I've got another question on 3.2, but that's just a factual question to start with.
Well, the reference to a slightly decline in performance is in relation to the overall benefit processing time, rather than the processing time in relation to crisis grants that's referred to. So maybe Lorna can clarify that.
Thank you, but we don't have it here, Chairman. We don't have those figures here, so we can't tell that. Is that right?
Yeah, it's as John says, it's our processing time, so our housing and council tax reduction claims has reduced. We're now up to 19.5 days for new applications. It's taken us, our target is normally 18, but because we've got that resource assisting in DHP applications, we could do with that resource back into a benefit administration to assist with the volume of new claims that's still coming through. We've still got a high volume and a high volume of change of circumstances, which processing time has also declined slightly because of a lack of resource.
Thanks, Chair. Also, just to apologies that it wasn't referenced more explicitly in the report, but that performance figure features in the CCS business plan and is subject to the 6-month performance report that goes to CCS committee. So that's where you see that overall performance. But I take your point, we should have made that more explicit in this report, so apologies for that.
Could I ask about, I see that there's been a bid deferred with respect to a drop-in centre to assist with online benefit applications. I think it's really important that if we are going to put in more resources to help people access online, which I'm sure is probably necessary, at least in the beginning of things, I do not think it should be a separate standalone arrangement. I think we should be using such facilities as we have, the libraries, customer services, and I do not think it's right to try to do something separately. Partly because actually if people come into those service centres, chances are then they might be persuaded to use other services there, which is after all what we're trying to do, to maximise the benefit of the public pound. So I don't know what's planned here. I see it's deferred, but I have to say at this stage now, just as a matter of advice, I would really be worried if we were setting up something separately.
Thanks, Chair. That bid was a bid made from the hub in the Vennel, what was kind of NCVS. So it was a Dumfries-based drop-in centre. That bid came forward before the announcement in relation to the rollout of universal credit. So it wasn't focused on that at all. And one of the considerations that came from the officer subgroup was broadly the point that Councillor Maitland's making, is that we want to make sure that we have a more uniform, coherent, strategic approach to this provision, rather than just respond to individual requests, which may meet a need in a particular place at a particular time, but is maybe not a long-term or sustainable programme of support. So that was the reason why we deferred that for further consideration, and that's kind of linked to the next report in terms of universal credit rollout programme. But the points taken on board from Councillor Maitland, and it was featured in our consideration of the bid.
Ian?
I think, James, just one of the questions was in my mind, but I think it looks as if it's quite clear that it's for a year, I think, is what's being proposed. So just clarity in regards to, looks like it was originally for 2, but the working group have looked at that and said, no, really, let's look at this for a year and review it thereafter, see if the need's still there. So just to get an understanding on that, is that the case? Is it it'll run for a year then be reviewed? And does that come back to the subcommittee, or does that sit in the hands of yourself? Or would that, if there was a further view that it should be supported for another year or so, would that come back to this committee if that was the case?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The bid from the team was for a 2-year allocation. The officer group suggested that would be more appropriate for just 1 year's allocation, and that's what was included in the recommendations to members. The justification for that is because there is obviously other things going on in terms of the Chief Exec's Reshape programme. We need to see what comes out of that in terms of the resources and the structure of the whole service going forward, and that could influence how we deal with these issues going forward. So there was a decision to say, well, give 12 months funding, it can be reviewed. If there's any suggestion that we need to extend that funding, then that will come back to members as a member decision.
Ian?
Just to say, I mean, I absolutely support this. I'm getting quite a volume of constituents coming in now with this type of pressure that's on them, whether it's directly with DHP or even the Fiat team being involved. It's becoming, I see it more and more at a personal level, becoming a pressure. So I'm more than happy to support this and see it come back in a year's time.
Okay. Gail?
Just very briefly, picking up on Councillor Crothers' point, we know that we've had challenges in this area recruiting in the past, and it's quite a decent salary, which for a temporary job for a year, you know, it doesn't seem very appealing to be at that level, but only get a temporary sort of yearly contract. Is it likely that you'll have people already within the service who will step up into that role and then you'll backfill, or are you going to go to external advert on these?
I think it's too difficult to predict specifically, because we just have to go through the process. But certainly in the past, we've had interest from internal employees who are looking to maybe progress and step up for a year, and then we can backfill their post more easily. So that's a potential, but obviously we couldn't prejudge the outcome of the recruitment process.
Okay, if we've got no other members, we'll turn to the recommendations. Are members happy to note 2.1 and 2.2? Members happy to agree the application? Gail, sorry, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem with that. But just with the caveat that if there is, you know, if pressures begin to build within this sort of area, that we get informed of it sooner rather than later, so that we're not sort of putting extra pressure on the staff.
Good point, yeah. Okay, so that's 2.2 agreed. Okay, can we turn to item number 6? A report that we're going to get now on a pretty regular basis, I would imagine. Universal Credit Implementation Progress Report. Can I ask Lorna if there's anything she wishes to add to the report?
Okay, thanks, Chair. No, I've nothing further to add to the report, but also happy to take questions.
Okay, can I open up to members' questions? Ronnie?
It was just 3.5 and the partnerships arrangement. I'm working on behalf of DWP as well. I take it everybody's on board with this, you know, the DAGCAS and all the other RSLs and things like that.
Yes, I mean, it's so far it's only been one implementation meeting, and it's really been DWP providing information about how it's going to roll out, what it's going to look like, and each of the partners, you know, feeding in potential concerns or areas that we think that, you know, there could be problems to look at. So the partners around the table are all on board with the rollout. So, yeah.
Any other, Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. The situation, you know, and first of all, we were talking about the figures supplied. It's in paragraph 3.2. So the figures supplied by the Department of Work Pensions analysts in January 2015 are higher than originally anticipated. Now, I must admit that's probably no surprising to most of us. But if you go over the page, sir, you know, and you're talking at the top of page 22, the initial rollout is to a small number of people. The current projections of the numbers involved are 78 needing assistance with online claims and 79 for budgeting support during 2015-16. My question, bearing in mind my earlier comment, Chair, was how realistic is that?
We'll have to wait and see. It's, you know, it's new applicants for job seekers allowance, so it's, you know, it'll depend on the employment market. We just need a big redundancy for a big employer in the region that could impact these figures very negatively. Our economy may pick up over the next year and we'll have more people in employment. Therefore, it may be less than what the DWP are predicting. there is some scepticism about whether these figures are true or not. We've obviously spoke to other pilot authorities, specifically in Scotland and Aberdeen and Inverness and their experience, and what they'd said about, especially the uptake of budget and support, was lower than what the DWP had predicted. There was, not a great uptake, but then they questioned the process that, the referral to DWP. So we're mindful that these are figures that have been provided by DWP, but that they could vary.
Can we have the assurance, Chair, that we will have adequate monitoring systems in place, and that, when we see things, going or tending to, or looking as though they're going off the rails, that we'll be beating a path back to the door of this subcommittee, sir?
Yes, I think so, and that was one of the reasons why we want to keep this in-house initially, so that we've got a very tight control on the impact this is having on us locally.
Thanks, Chair, that's helpful.
Thanks, Jay. Just to come in on that, to reinforce the message from Lorna, the approach that we're taking is to set up this kind of single point of contact from within the service, because it's absolutely critical that we keep a very close eye on the number of applicants coming through, and also the level of support that those applicants need for strategic reasons, but also it's linked to the funding that the council will receive through the delivery partnership agreement. So the way that we're looking to set it up is to have that single point of contact that will monitor very closely each case as they come through. And if it looks like the trend from the start is exceeding what the DWP are predicting, then we'll certainly make sure that the members are aware, and we'll be going back to the DWP to talk about any additional funding that's required to support that level of activity.
Ronnie?
Thanks for letting me back in. It's 3.6 and it's the last paragraph. A number of services within the council use financial assessments for a variety of concessions. All services will need to review their current practices to ensure that they take account of the universal credit from April. And then it goes on to say a communications plan regarding these needs to be considered. I just wondered if you'd considered that and how that best be rolled out.
I think we've recognised very early that there is a number of assessment process for a variety of different concessions in there, so we need to we're looking at how best we get that message out across the council. I mean, as welfare reform's been rolling out, the message has been out there that universal credit is coming, so there needs to be that consideration. So I would hope most services are aware that that was going to have to be a consideration going forward, but we are looking at how we now step that up to ensure that from April, even though it's small numbers, that all services are aware and are making the necessary steps to take that into account.
Alistair?
Thanks very much, Chair. The preceding paragraphs, are the last sentence they were talking about, given the large geographical area of our region, one of the challenges will be to ensure adequate services across the whole area. Can we have a brief indication, sort of, how that will be done, and more importantly, how it will be monitored to ensure, Chair, that it continues to be done?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think given the small numbers, even if you take the DWP predictions as read, and we're only looking at 7 or 8 people, these could come in anywhere across the region, Stranraer, Annan, Eskdale, Muir, Upper Nithsdale. So one of the proposals is for digital support, because we have integrated facilities, customer service centres, libraries that cover the majority of the area, that would be a good place to provide digital support. We already have staff in place who assist with housing benefit claims. So for a starting point, they cover broadly the main areas in the region, and that would be a way, and we could click, because we already have systems in place in those areas and in those facilities, we can record the contacts as they arise. The budget and support was a bit more difficult because that's not in every settlement across the area. So initially we're looking at, as proposed, as a welfare support officers, because they're in the 4 main settlements across the area. There is one in at least each of the areas, and they are more mobile to provide that assistance where it arises in that area. But again, they have systems in place, we can record it and record that impact across the area.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, are Job Centre Plus involved in this as well? Because obviously they can flag people fairly easily as well. I mean, I appreciate your housing element will allow you to target, but is Job Centre Plus signed up to this and ready to go too?
Yeah, Job Centre Plus play a pivotal part in this, because when somebody claims universal credit, the idea is the journey they will have, they will claim online or over the phone. Every person who applies for universal credit will attend a work-focused interview with the Job Centre, and at that point they will identify whether they need digital support, whether they need budgeting support, and that's where the referral comes from. It comes from the Job Centre. So they will have a key role, and we're working with them, especially with the 3 local job centres, to ensure that there's an understanding both on their side and on our housing benefit and service delivery side of what each side is actually doing.
Ronnie?
It goes back to the communications thing. Clearly, it's getting rolled out in April, and I just wondered, internally we're doing a communications plan, but externally, I mean, maybe not our responsibility, maybe it's the Department of Work and Pensions, but it goes live in Dumfries and Galloway in April. I just wondered, I haven't seen a lot out there regarding this in the local media or whatever. Is there a launch, if that's the right word?
Not officially a launch, but some of the discussions we're having with Job Centre, DWP are doing some communications, but it is very low key, and I think that's some of the comments about the other pilot areas. It was quite low key, and the advice from them was develop something locally with a local sort of logo on it to deliver that. We are talking as part of the delivery group, the initial planning group, of how best to do that communication, and there has been some discussion about how do we do that to the external partners and the public, make the public, the communication wide enough so people are aware of it. But because it is intended to be small scale, what we don't do is overboard and actually end up, scaremongering actually what's going to happen. So we are looking at how do we get this communication out, bearing in mind we've got a very short time scale between now and April, but that is being looked at.
Ian?
I suppose quite a broad question, Chairman, in regards to the possible outcomes of the Smith Commission. Will there be any implications from that, coming from that, possibly, that could affect how this is delivered in future years?
The initial feedback is yes, the likelihood is there will be impacts, but given that the Smith Commission needs, from my understanding, agreement from both national government and Scottish government, I think there's a fair bit of horse trading still to be done on what the final agreement will look like. And certainly the discussions that have been parted to have all been, it's more than likely to be 2 years before the actual contents of the Smith Commission will actually impact on UC delivery. So at this point in time, we're planning to deliver what we've got in front of us just now, and then when the Smith Commission happens, in whatever shape or form that takes, then we'll have to deal with that then.
No. Okay, as I say, this is definitely an area we're going to be returning to, I suspect, on a very regular basis. It just fills me full of horror, I have to say, that the amount of time it's taken to develop universal credit, we're still talking about staff having to basically administer this in a manual way, with no computer system, so to speak, that actually works yet when it comes to universal credit. I'm just trying to take bets on how many of us will reach retirement age before universal credit actually has a computer system that works and is fully implemented. I suspect all of us is the answer to that question, but I'm sure we'll get regular updates. Can we turn to the recommendations? Are members happy to note 2.1 and to agree 2.2 and agree 2.3? Okay, thank you very much indeed. I don't have any further business, so thank you for your attendance.